Hello. In this video, I want to go through a really short example of how can you, as a manager, think of a problem that might bring you closer to how an analyst might think. I think this is important for you to understand what are the steps, the process involved in coming up with a solution, hypothesis, the analysis, how the whole uh, thing works. Okay, let's get started. So imagine that you want to figure out if all meetings begin late. Again, you can take any other example that you can think. You can look at the data from your watch and see how many steps you do per day. You can think of many other things. But for the sake of simplicity, let's take this example. So let's imagine that you want to figure out which meetings begin late. And so you begin to compile data from, say, um, Outlook or any other application that you have where you have scheduled your meetings, and then you first of all you gather all the data. That's the first step. You gather all the data, and to make it easy, you gather all the data on paper. So let's keep all the digital processing. You just gather all the data on paper for the last, say, 2 weeks. So now let's plot the data that you gather. Imagine that you have the x axis for the time, y axis is the amount of minutes a meeting began late that day, and then you will have a distribution of dots in that chart. Once that you have the distribution of dots in the chart, you can see what is the average time at which meetings began. You would see that some meetings began on time. Those are the meetings that are exactly on the y-axis. There's no delay. That's why the y-axis is 0. And then you will find the mean of all the points that are distributed there. This is the average amount of time that it takes to a meeting to begin for the last 2 weeks. Then let's say that it's acceptable that a meeting begins 5 minutes after the time that it's been appointed. So you calculate which percentage of all the meetings that you had during the last 2 weeks took place within those first 5 minutes. And this will be the percentage of meetings that actually began on time. Now, if you want to translate this in terms of the impact for the company, you could take the other meetings that do not begin on time. You can calculate how much time it was spent waiting till the meeting began and calculate how many dollars that might cost per hour to the company. So now you have the economic impact of the delay of all those meetings through the last 2 weeks. You can extend that to the number of participants that were supposed to take part in the meeting, and then you will have the aggregate of the amount of time that was wasted because of the delays of the meetings. Now you can step back and think if the impact really worth the effort to actually dig deeper into what are the causes of this. If you notice that the impact is important, then probably is interesting. It's not only interesting, but also has a business impact to dig deeper and understand how can you save money for the company, how to make the processes more efficient. Now, if you realize that the impact is not that important, it's not that big, then you could just see, okay, this was an interesting effect, but it's not exactly something that we want to go really deep into. Another thing that is interesting is to find out what have in common those meetings that started early. We can also do that for the meetings that in general began really late. If, let's say, if the same person that is the organizer of the meeting, then we could say, well, we can ask for advice to this person and see how is the format, what is the structure that this person actually has in order to make sure that everyone is compliant and comes to the meeting at the right time. Finally, once that you have some results, you want to go take that data and go and ask around in the company and see if people share the same opinion on those results. You have to contrast that with the opinion that people have. And finally, if you see that it's not just interesting, but it has an impact, the results that you have, you should actually take action and adopt, for instance, the best behaviors, the best practices that those meetings that begin on time apply. I hope that this really simple example gives you some insights into how to apply a data-driven way of thinking to some very simple questions like, do meetings begin on time? And actually dig deeper into the causes and how to improve that process by means of reviewing data, looking at certain hypotheses, analyzing what's the distribution of the meetings and so on.